Well, the left is taking Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy's retirement hard, so hard, in fact, that some of them want to throw out the entire constitutional order and delegitimize the Supreme Court itself. Ian Samuel is a lecturer at Harvard Law School. He's been demanding that as soon as Democrats hold power once again, they need to expand the size of the Supreme Court and pack it with liberals. A week ago, Samuel tweeted this, quote, "Pack the courts" should be a phrase on par with abolish ICE. Ian Samuel joins us tonight. Ian, thank you for coming on.
Hey, thanks for having me. Welcome from Paris.
Oh, of course. Wouldn't it just be easier to give California, I don't know, 27 new congressional districts in LA County and be done with it? Or maybe just abolish Congress entirely? I mean, if the goal is just to increase the power of the left, why mess around with the Supreme Court?
Well, you know, the thing is, I think we very much agree on the basic end here, which is that the Supreme Court should not be a partisan institution subject to sort of like ideological swings. The problem is the Supreme Court, the justices of the Supreme Court, 14 out of the last 18 have been appointed by Republican presidents. They had sort of 11 in a row before Ruth Bader Ginsburg, which is kind of a surprising and almost remarkable achievement when you think about it. And so we're left in this position now where the partisan balance on the Supreme Court is way out of whack with what people have voted for. So what I'm really in favor of is returning the Supreme Court to being a sort of nonpartisan institution that is set away from the sort of fray of ideological politics. But we can't do that until we add some seats to correct the balance that we've lost, really.
I love it. You're smooth, I will say that. So when you tweet, pack the court, quote, pack the court ought to be up there with abolish ICE. That is, in fact, a nonpartisan statement somehow. How does that work? How is that not? How is increasing the partisan Democratic representation on the court indeed nonpartisan?
Well, you know, when you encounter a jewel thief, you must steal things back, Tucker, as I'm sure you know. And look, I would love a sort of settlement once this is all done. I would love to get to a place, for example, where, you know, maybe every president gets 2 or 3 guaranteed Supreme Court nominations. You know, maybe we should have an even-numbered Supreme Court. You know, 10 justices, 5 from each party. I think that would be nice. It would require a little court packing, but you know, that's the art of the deal. But the reality is we're way out of whack. And if we're to have any hope of moving forward with a Supreme Court that's not this kind of ideological partisan institution, we have a little mending fences to do. So let's do it.
So, right. So in other words, increase the power of the left and everything will be cool. But as long as it's center-right in the court, I think by anybody's, I mean, look, if you match public opinion polling to the issues, you will see that the court is not way out to the right at all. And I've seen it.
Oh, come
it's
on.
not. It's pretty much right in the center.
You don't believe that.
It's not. On the issues, it is not. Well, I do believe it, actually, because I know what the numbers are.
I know you don't believe that, and I know you shouldn't, right? So, for example, I don't think either of us believe that the way that Citizens United should come out should be subject to a public opinion poll, even though you know as well as I do that 75%
I'm not suggesting any of the decisions ought to be subject to public opinion.
But that's not how law should work, right? You would agree with that.
No, but you yourself, no, but you're making the counter case. It's hard. You're claiming that we need to pack the court, which a naked power grab by the left, we both know it, but you're saying we need to do that because it will be more representative of the public will. And I'm merely noting as a factual matter, because I've seen the numbers, that the majority of recent Supreme Court decisions fall within the center line of public opinion. So actually there isn't a problem other than Democrats don't get to do their will with the court to the extent you wish they could.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. Look, I've tried to learn well from the most accomplished politicians of my age. And to my mind, the best one is Mitch McConnell. And he understood as well as I do that control of the Supreme Court is, to paraphrase Rod Blagojevich, not something you just give away, right? He sort of court shrunk for a year and a half to 8 members until there was a president to his liking. And remember, before the 2016 election, Ted Cruz and John McCain and all your beloved heroes, Tucker, were saying maybe they should hold the seat open while Hillary Clinton was president. What I'm saying is that that sort of power politics has to swing both ways, and then we have to end it. That's the view. So actually, it's not about
okay, right. So you're saying that once we, and by the way, just for the record, I hated that. I hated that they did that. Not because I wanted some leftover in the court, but because I thought it was power politics. I said that at the time. I don't like Merrick Garland was a leftist, posing as a centrist, but I still was against not considering him. However, what you're saying is that was wrong.
What should we do about it?
Let's do it 20-fold. No, we should not delegitimize the court in the eyes of the public by packing it with lefties from Harvard.
Okay, how about
very
this?
cynical.
I'm a reasonable
That's more
man.
cynical than I am.
How about this?
I'm sorry, we're totally out of time. Yeah,
well,
give me one sentence.
Okay. Socialism will win. Thanks for having me.
Ian Samuel, thanks for revealing yourself. I appreciate it.
Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy announcing his retirement, opening up yet another seat on the high court that President Trump will have the opportunity to fill.
So who can we expect the president to tap to replace Kennedy? Here now to weigh in is legal affairs reporter for the Washington Times, Alex Foyer. Thank you for joining us this morning. So let's get right to it. We're hearing a lot of names being thrown around in the mix here. What do you think?
Yeah, one of the top names that's been floated around here is Brett Kavanaugh. He's a circuit judge on the D.C. Circuit and was appointed by President George W. Bush and actually worked in his administration. And so that's kind of one of the front runners we've been hearing, as well as Thomas Hardiman, who was a name out of the Third Circuit that we heard prior to Justice Gorsuch being nominated. And so he's kind of a repeat. We have several actually as well who have been nominated by President Trump to appellate courts and are now being considered for elevation. So it'll be interesting to see if the president picks one of his own or goes to a Bush appointee.
And you see the big, the 25 names on that list right up there behind us. The hoopla, the melee, all the mayhem around this decision and this guy retiring, Justice Kennedy retiring, has been incredible. And now you have Schumer saying he wants to wait till after the midterms are over. I just want to know why. Why do you think he wants that? What's the point?
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring that up because the DNC is actually already fundraising off of Justice Kennedy's retirement. They sent out fundraising emails yesterday. And, you know, I think that they're hoping it energizes their base as we saw in 2016 with it energizing the Republican base. And I think it was upwards of 70% of evangelicals turned out for President Trump simply because of the Supreme Court vacancy. However, you know, I believe that Republicans will fill this seat prior to the midterms. We had in 2010, it was a midterm year. Justice Elena Kagan was nominated in May, confirmed in August. Justice Gorsuch, for example, was announced in January 31st of 2017 and confirmed early April, so about 2.5 months. So if, you know, President Trump comes out mid-July with a nominee, and that gives Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell about 2.5 months before the October 1st start of the next term to put someone on the bench, and that's very likely he could do it.
We've heard President Trump say that he wants this person to be there for 40 to 45 years, you know, God willing. What type of characteristics do you think this person will have? And also, what type of issues do you think we should be keeping an eye out for?
So I definitely think most of his appellate courts, for example, have been people who are in their 40s. So we're likely to see a young Supreme Court nominee. Amy Coney Barrett, for example, is a recent appellate court nominee of President Trump's that's been also floated around as a potential replacement for Justice Kennedy. She actually was interesting to watch during her Senate hearings for the circuit court placement because she was criticized for being too Catholic. And so I think that's something to watch because President Kennedy was kind of seen as a justice who would uphold Roe v. Wade, and since we might see, you know, the president look to someone who might have a little bit more of a pro-life leaning, that could be an issue that we hear a lot about over the next several months as this debate between Democrats and Republicans heat up over who will replace that swing vote on the high court.
Am I crazy to be concerned about how politically charged this decision? Because it just seems like the Supreme Court shouldn't be such a political place. We've seen what happens when our Justice Department gets politicized. We're seeing that now. Should we worry about justices making decisions based on political bias?
Yeah, you hit on something I think is really important as a legal affairs reporter. It's very interesting for me to see when judges get a certain case, not just the Supreme Court, but even appellate courts, who appointed them, because it's very interesting to watch. tends to suggest how they will vote on a certain case, especially with politically charged issues. And so I think you're hitting on something that a lot of people looked at Justice Kennedy and really respected, that he was a swing vote. He was often siding with the 4 liberal justices on the court in the past. And so, you know, it's interesting that we don't really know who lawyers will be trying to persuade this next term, because it was always Justice Kennedy that lawyers were trying to convince to their side, one or the other. And it could be that it's Chief Justice Roberts that ends up taking that role.
All right. We will see. Alex Sawyer, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.